asan doon yung
education.
extension? Asan doon yung term extension?
Hindi, ito lang ang sinasabi ko, yung item 6
Kaya
and
nga,
item
yung
7.
the one that is being alluded to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My discomfort in the present discussion is the inability of all the presenters to make us believe that amending the restrictive provisions of the Constitution is the way forward. I have not heard any of the presenters, Mr. Speaker, that they have at least asked the potential investors, whoever they are, the current and potential investors, did they talk to them? Did they ask them what they really wanted? Because probably we're not getting enough foreign direct investments because of the traffic, because of the high cost of electricity, because probably they think that peace and order is very unstable in this country. And probably the high cost of doing business in this country. These are all the things that they should have considered. I have not heard any of them, Mr. Chair, that they have probably made a survey. And in the survey, it's 99.9% the potential investors really wanted, okay, to amend the Constitution, specifically, which part? The part which they wanted to buy our lands? Eh sana ganun sa... Mr. Chair, sa ngayon, it's very much under speculation. Why is it that the most important people or respondents that should have been asked are absent? Eh sila yung iniimbita natin eh. Is it not correct for us to be able to ask them first? Ano mo talagang gusto nyo para kayo makapag-invest ng marami dito sa bansang Pilipinas? Para matalo namin ang Vietnam. Ano ba talagang gusto nyo? O sabi nila, ayaw namin sa inyo kasi matraffic kayo eh. O hindi na natin i-amend ng Constitution. Mr. Chair, na nakalulungkot, sinasabi nating lahat, the economic presenters, sinabi nila, tayo ay masyado tayong malayo sa Vietnam. Tingnan mo ang yung performance natin on foreign investors. We are lagging behind. Ganito. Lahat. And I believe so, na siguro talagang tayo ang pinaka-kulelat, Mr. Chair. But we have not asked them, is it really the economic provisions, the factors or the main reasons why there is a sluggish entry or inflow of foreign investment in this country? Yun po yung nakita ko. Wala pong nag-present ng ganun. There should have been a comparative presentation na pinagtatanong po natin ang potential investors natin, mga capitalist, mga foreign capitalist, kung ang gusto talaga nila ay baguhin natin ang ating Constitution in relation to its economic provisions.
Thank you.
Wala po akong narinig, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you.
May I answer that,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman?
thank you, Deputy Speaker Marcoleta. In fact, we have a consolidated matrix of position of resource person on specific amendments of the 1987 Constitution with regard to the economic restrictive provision. And the business groups that were invited before and submitted their position papers in the 16, 17, and 18 Congress, because as you know, Deputy Speaker Marcoleta, this is just a continuation of hearing. Before we already had a committee hearing in this regard. And just to cite some of the business groups that submitted their position papers, AmCham, the American Chamber of Commerce, Mr. John Forbes, they agree with the changing of the economic provisions of the 1987 Constitution, even though the Philippines has experienced an increase in foreign investment in recent years. It still pales comparison with more affluent neighbors in this regard. However, it takes the position that there's no need to allow foreign ownership of lands extending the years of leasing lands may already suffice for purposes of investment. Joint Foreign Chambers of the Philippines said they are amenable to removing restriction without condition for investment climate policy reform. This is to permit more capital to flow into the Philippines to increase the rate of GDP growth. Employment also agrees with 100% ownership of lands. Makati Business Club agrees with the lifting of restriction and or putting lower barriers to trade and investment, and states that in competitive global economy, any barriers should be subject to modification and specific restrictions should be left to the legislature. Management Association of the Philippines agrees with the removal of the equity restriction. Mr. Peter Wallace, the President, Business Forum, recommends the removal of the economic restriction allowing foreign ownership. So we can cite so many positions of the resource person that was invited before, coming from the business groups, players in our economic sectors, and those who participate in our national patrimony, and they are submitted all their positions paper before this committee. At any rate, Deputy Speaker, we will invite them again.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I read that part already. Most of them are domestic groups. Well, siguro ang kaiba lang, American Chamber. Pero ilan sila? Ilang Amerikano ang nag-invest dito? Ang sinasabi natin, let us talk to the potential investors worldwide. Hindi lamang kukunting Amerikano na nagsabi na ganito yung gusto nating gawin. We are
Yes,
not...
the joint foreign chambers of the Philippines is composed of James Wilkins of the American Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, Daniel Alexander, the President of Australia New Zealand Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, Julian Payne, the President of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, Nabel Francis, European Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, Kichi Matsunaga, Japanese Chamber of Commerce and Industry of the Philippines, and Ho Ik Lee, Korean Chamber of Commerce, and Evelyn Nang, the Philippine Association of Multinational Companies, President, Regional Headquarters. So these are multinationals in the joint. Wag ho kayo mag-alala.
Yeah,
I-invite
but
ho-
these are not the representative potential investors. Yun ang ating sinasabi rito. Mr. Chair, we are proposing to amend our fundamental law. It should have been backed up by a well-researched study presented by a group involving potential investors worldwide. Not only a few Americans or a few Australians and a handful of Japanese or Koreans. And Chinese. Thank you very much. Kailangan nandun yung kitang-kita mo talaga. Each one of them are itching and proposing to us, please amend your constitution, specifically provisions 1, 2, 3, and 4. Kasi tayong lahat, sinasabi natin, kailangan po nating i-amend. Baligtad po parang nga nangyayari, we are putting the carabao ahead of the cart.
Well, I think Deputy Speaker Marcoleta, in all of the research person that we have asked to present, they have their own position papers and back up with the data and analysis of their study. In fact, one that was presented by Kong Joey Zaceda was the study by OECD and the World Bank, where it shows that those restrictive countries, restrictive economy tends to receive less foreign direct investment or inflows of foreign capital. So yun siguro po yung hinahanap mo. And we have an OECD study that shows the flows of foreign direct investment. I fully understand your point that we need to invite the players, to invite the players in the economic sector as well as those who want to participate in our national patrimony and come up with their position on what provision in the constitutions should be lifted so that they be encouraged to participate.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
kanina yung ating from the DILG, he presented his report and he touched base with so many sectors of our population. And he came up with this list. So I believe in this list, and probably these are all active signatures composing of something like 556,000 people wanting to amend our constitution. Pero sabi ko nga, he could have gathered 55 million votes. Kung pinresent niya sa mga tao, tingnan mo, lahat ng potential investors in this planet talagang pupunta sila sa atin kung i-amend ang constitution natin. Palagay ko ako, pipirma na rin kagad ako. Sapagat nakita ko mismo, ang nagsalita are potential investors. These are the correct respondents that should have influenced our decision. Talaga palang kailangan nating i-amend ang constitution. Hindi tayong nauuna. Oh, teka muna, kulelat tayo. Kaya pala tayo kulelat, nagatatakot sila dahil malala ang traffic natin. Masyadong, para siya makakuha ng permit, Mr. Chair, it will take him 30 days.
Yeah, I fully understand your point.
1 day lamang yung
Yes,
Pagkatapos
Deputy
ang
Speaker.
kuryente mo, napakataas. Baka ako, these are the factors that discourage the potential investors from coming in. Ako kung talagang ma-identify natin ngayon din, talagang lumitaw 99.9, ito talagang gusto ng mga investors. Sino naman tayo para hindi tayo, di ba, masway dun sa kanong argument?
I fully understand your point, Deputy Speaker. In fact, those are essentially domestic problems that can be addressed by, of course, good governance and political will. But you're speaking of restrictive economic provisions of the Constitution that can only be resolved through constitutional amendments. Those areas, you need not resort to constitutional amendment by solving the traffic and the high cost of electricity. But these sectors and areas of concern, restrictive economic provision really calls for a meaningful constitutional reform by lifting the said provisions.
Mr.
So
Chair,
you may proceed.
I'm only trying to explain that
Yes.
gusto nating palabasin the chief factors talaga, kaya natin inamend ang Constitution, ini-encourage tayo talaga ng potential investors. Kasi ang talagang ina-amend lang natin are economic provisions. Kaya ko lang naman nasasabi ang traffic, baka naman doon sila natatakot. Baka naman natatakot sila sa kuryente. Gusto ko lang linawin kasi baka mamaya misinterpret ninyo ako na i-amend natin ang Constitution because gusto nating masolve ang traffic. Hindi ganon.
Salamat, Tatay Dante Marcoleta. Kung Manong Edsel Lagman, can you please wind up? Can we, yeah. Anyway, Kong Lagman, you will still have more time in our succeeding hearings.
I will reduce my question to only one. I will.
Thank you. Thank you, Manong Edsel. Thank you very much. And
this is a question to Yusek Jonathan Malaya. If he's still
wala
there.
na po, Manong Edsel, umalis na po si Yusek Jonathan. But in the succeeding hearing, we will invite him to be physically present or at least in the Zoom. So please reserve your question to Yusek Jonathan Malaya.
Okay. Thank you,
Chair.
Chairman, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Congressman Lagman.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, very brief, Kong Stella, because the last to ask or manifest is Kong Ron Salo. Kong Stella, you're now recognized.
Hindi po, Mr. Chair, very short response lang po dun sa sinabi ni Kong Kit. Ang sa tingin ko po yung the decision to own land versus the decision to lease land, I think that should really be a business decision that should be made available to foreign investors. So tama naman po na in many situations, a lease arrangement would work. But also in certain situations, mas malaki ang return kapag pinayagan mong bilhin or i-own ng isang foreign businessman ang lupain. So sa tingin ko po, that's the essence of allowing flexibility. Na kailangan po bigyan ng pagkakataon na gumawa ng the best business decision. And that would include the decision to either own or lease land. And so therefore, Mr. Chair, I really stick by my position na sana po payagan na po ang limited amount of ownership by foreigners po.
Thank you, Kong Stella. Kong Ron Salo, if you're ready, please proceed.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair. This will just be very brief in the interest of time. But of course, I'm manifesting that I'll be interpolating next hearing. I understand that I'm one of the firsts to interpolate. Nonetheless, Mr. Chair, paulit-ulit pag pinag-uusapan po itong charter change, and now we're just limiting it to economic provisions. Ang palaging comment palagi is walang timing, it's not timely. I would recall that in the 17th Congress, I actively participated that particular, almost all the committee hearings then on this particular proposals to amend the Constitution. And even this particular Congress, I also actively participated also. And paulit-ulit, every time na itatakal ito, even before na when I became member of Congress, every time na pag-uusapan po yung amending the Constitution, palaging comment is, hindi ito napapanahon. So ang tanong ko nga doon, kailan talaga siya exactly napapanahon na pag-usapan? Kung every time na bubuksan natin yung pag-usap tungkol dito, ang sagot na kaagad bago pa ang pag-usapan hindi napapanahon. But I do believe, kagaya po ng sinasabi po ni Congresswoman Stella Kimbo kanina, maring hindi timely ngayon because it should have been amended yesterday or long ago. So yun po yung first point ko, Mr. Chair. Yung issue po ng timely, it is always timely. Kagaya ng sinabi mo kanina, to do the right thing. And the right thing is for us to prepare our economy, to prepare, undertake all these particular proposed amendments. And at the end of the day, it will be decided by the people. So tayo lang naman magpo-propose, pero hindi tayo nakakaroon ng opportunity na i-present ito sa mga tao dahil every time na pag-uusapan, ang sasabihin sa atin hindi timely, hindi napapanahon. But of course, the condition that we are in provides us the perfect opportunity in order for us to really make our country more attractive to investors. And as much as most of our economists are saying and our resource persons are saying, kailangan nga talaga naman natin ng foreign capital because the local money natin or yung capital natin is not sufficient in order to boost further yung economy natin. Ang clarification ko lang, Mr. Chair, dahil every time na pag-uusapan nga natin palaging sagot natatakot dahil inaamin na natin yung konstitusyon. Pero based dito sa pinag-uusapan natin, Mr. Chair, ang sinakasaad lang naman po dito, ang dinadagdag natin is unless otherwise provided for by law. So ibig sabihin po nito, Mr. Chair, correct me if I'm wrong, hindi naman po automatic yung pag-lift. Tama ba yon, Mr. Chair?
Well, that's true. The conditions still remain, and if that condition, which is the enactment of a new legislation, will arise, then it will be, the status quo will change.
So
Because-
precisely, Mr. Chair, ang pinag-uusapan lang naman natin dito ay bigyan ng kapangyarihan yung Kongreso soon in a future legislation kung kailangang baguhin yung specific na requirements na nakasad po sa Constitution. But even if these particular proposed amendments are adopted and ratified by our people, isa lang pa rin ang ibig sabihin po noon, hindi pa rin nagbabago kung ano yung nakasad po sa Constitution sapagkat subject pa rin ito sa future legislation and subject pa rin doon sa realities na mga conditions at the same time doon sa wisdom ng mga future elected leaders natin. Tama ba yon?
That's correct, Congressman Salo.
With that, Mr. Chair, wala na po akong sasabihin for the meantime and I'm reserving my time to interpolate in the next hearing. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
That's duly noted, and thank you, Kong Salo. In fact, salamat sa lahat na nag-participate ngayon. Kong Arlene,
Yes.
your manifestation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A brief manifestation lang po, kaugnay dito sa ating pagdinig, sa charter change. Mr. Chair, totoong kagyat na dapat tugunan ng krisis pang-ekonomiya na pinalala ng epekto ng pandemya sa mga negosyo at manggagawa sa bansa. Subalit, mahalagang masuri kung charter change ba talaga ang sasagot sa problemang ito. For this reason, Mr. Chair, we need to ground our assumption on the actual situation and data with regard to foreign investment and job generation. In fact, sa COVID-19 pandemic, should move us to reflect on these old free market assumptions rather than continue to blindly cling to models that trumpet FDI as engine of job generation and economic growth. Actually, dun po nakagear yung mga tanong natin. Pero dahil sa susunod na pagdinig naman, magkakaroon tayo ng pagkakataon na makapagtanong, doon ko na po itatanong yung ibang mga kaugnay dito. Gusto ko lang pong sabihin na kung meron bang datos na nagpapakita ng kaugnayan ng foreign investment at paglikha ng trabaho. Totoo bang lumalaki ang foreign investment at naiibsa ng kawalan ng trabaho sa bansa over the years. Siyempre, yun po yung mga kailangan nating malaman. Napakita kanina yung datos ng 2017 kung saan umabot ng 5.7% ang tantos ng kawalan ng trabaho sa bansa, pero record high ang foreign direct investment. So, parang baka kailangan po natin talagang pag-isipan ito. May available data ba tayo or report on what kind of jobs are being created by the FDIs flowing into the country? Sinabi po kanina ni Congressman Marcoleta na tanungin natin mga foreign investors, bakit hindi natin tanungin yung mga MSMEs natin? Kasi yun po yung maaapektuhan talaga, di ba? So kailangan po may mga ganong no? Malaki po yung agam-agam namin na kahit i-open natin ang ekonomiya, papalala ng pandemya ng bansa, hindi pa rin makakahikayat ng foreign investors. Kasi batay sa datos, bumagsak ang FDI ng 11% sa unang 9 na buwan ng taon sa gitna ng paghihigpit at paglaganap ng COVID-19. So Mr. Chair, marami pa po akong ilang mga tanong, no? Lalong-lalo na dito sa usapin ng ilan sa mga kumpanyang umalis o tumiklop sa gitna ng militaristang lockdown ay mga multinational corporations. Bilang resulta, libo-libo po ang nawalan ng trabaho. So yun po yung mga gusto nating i-point out. And kaugnay din po doon sa RBH2 na phrase, unless otherwise provided by law, na ini-introduce sa economic provisions, sa Constitution, even on the provision on land ownership, hindi ba't magre-resulta ito sa matinding demolisyon at pangangamkam ng lupa, lalo na sa mga lupang ninuno na sagana sa likas yaman? Mr. Chair, with due respect to the authors, we cannot lay bare our lands to total foreign land ownership at the expense of the Filipino people on the assumption that foreign enterprises will create jobs. Hindi natin kailangan isuko ang ating lupa at soberanya para sa malabong pangako ng paglikha ng trabaho. Lumalabas po na yung mga hindi
Can you
supported.
please wind up?
Yes, hindi po
Kong Arden.
supported ng mga concrete data and assumptions itong ini-introduce na ito na tsa-tsa. Higit na nakakabahala na nagtutulak ng full-scale economic liberalization habang humaharap po tayo sa pandemya at matinding krisis. Ang nakikita po natin, no, the much hyped reliance on foreign investment and externalities has in fact made us more economically vulnerable in this pandemic. Malinaw po ang tindig namin sa Gabriela Women's Party. We cannot cha-cha the pandemic away. We need squarely to address the issues being presented to us. Lack of free mass testing, uncertainties in the procurement of vaccine, lack of paid pandemic leaves in the private sector, paid leaves which would have helped ensure business continuity, lack of significant cash aid to poor families. Lahat po ito, payak na usapin na pwedeng tugunan nang hindi pinapasok ang usapin hinggil sa charter change. Unfortunately, eto pong mga economic arguments are being used as potential smokescreen for potential vested political interests. Yun na po ang gusto kong sabihin talaga, no? Nababahala po kami sa tinutungo ng tsa-tsa na ito. At hindi po namin gusto ang pagpapalawig pa talaga ng kapangyarihan ng ehekutibo sa kasalukuyan, lalong-lalo na sa kumpas ng Pangulo. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kong Arden. Thank you for your attendance today. All of you have attended today and for giving your time and effort.
Chair.
This meaningful constitutional reform. Kong Sharon, would you like to?
I just wanted to, I was watching, I will have questions but after na lang. But I was, in the next hearing na lang. But I just wanted to comment. I was watching the news earlier and there was an interview of, I think, Ibon Foundation. And they were asked, and they were saying, hindi daw totoo na economic provisions lang. Actually, the one speaking said it would be a miraculous enlightenment of the congressmen kung talagang economic provisions lang because we are going for what will be more self-serving for us. And I do take offense, and in behalf of the chairman, na, you know, just generalizing politicians and also and also maligning the integrity of the House as well as the chairman of this committee. Kasi repeatedly, it has been said that this is an economic provision charter change, Mr. Chair. That's all lang.
Thank you for that information, Sharon. I'm not aware of that interview with Bond Foundation. We have given her enough and appropriate time to ventilate all their positions and concern. It's but unfair to go out to public and in the media maligning this institution and this committee and professing misrepresentation in the public. Siguro mali yun.
Mr. Chair,
Salamat naman.
Honorable Chair, that was coinciding with this event, so don't refer to the interview as her because that's me. That's probably our executive director coinciding with this event.
Mr. Chair, may I have one question, please? Suggestion for next time, please. Quickly lang.
Yes, Secretary Olivar.
Okay, well, I'm glad Representative Sharon brought it up about Ibon. I have some questions with the veracity of some of the statements. So I'm hoping next time, the next session, and I'm assuming they'll be invited again, and hopefully I'll be invited again, boss. If they could show naman their data on the screen, no? So their data, their calculations, their numbers can be objectively evaluated. That would be very helpful, no? Kasi
Yes.
all
Yes.
of us,
Opo, we submitted our position paper to the committee,
Okay.
and I just omitted the data in the interest of time, and the data are from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Thank you.
that's fine. Hopefully we'll see it on
Chairman, I don't mean naman to worry anybody else, but this we take this as a pure debate on the issues and not, attack the personalities of the proponents or the committee, the representatives, or even the congressmen being politicians. We argue based on facts and based on our arguments or whatever we believe in, but not the personal side, sana, Mr. Chair.
Thank
Salamat
you.
po.
Thank you, Kong Sharon, because, in the
Mr.
process,
Chair.
we really need to
Mr. Chair,
develop public trust and public confidence
Mr.
in,
Chair.
informing the Filipino people in this endeavor of introducing this meaningful constitutional reform. Congressman Marcoleta.
Mr.
Deputy
Chair,
Speaker.
hindi kaya, actually, speculation lang sa akin. Kung nasabi man yun ng Ibon na hindi naman totoo kanya na economic provisions lang ang papalitan nila. Di
Kasi
ba?
daw term extension lang ang objective.
Oo. Baka naman kasi, ito naman akin lang, yung item 6 kasi nung ating RBH2, ang central point dito, Mr. Chair, is about education, arts, culture, and sports. Bakit sinali pa natin? Kasi pinag-uusapan natin, economic provision. Alam naman natin, economic provision, nandyan lang sa Article 12. Sinama kasi natin yung Article 14, which is education, sports, culture, and so on. Pagkatapos, meron pa tayong Article 16, which is general provision, hindi na rin economic provision.
Yes.
Kung sinasabi natin talaga na economic provision lang tayo, let us limit ourselves on Article 12. Baka
Nandun
naman
din kasi yung mass media and then yung advertising.
Yeah, but the dominant character here,
Oh.
Mr. Chair, is about sports, culture,
So asan doon
education.
yung extension? Asan doon yung term extension?
Hindi, ito lang ang sinasabi ko, yung item 6
Kaya
and
nga,
item
yung
7.
the one that is being alluded to us is term extension. So wala akong politika. Walang politika. But at any rate, bago pa tayo humaba, Deputy Speaker Marcoleta,
Mr.
first
Chair,
there will be, Arlene, tapos na tayo. There will be
Mr.
succeeding
Chair,
hearings.
Mr.
Please,
Chair,
Kong.
considering that we have heard our resource persons and we have a next hearing, I move to adjourn today's session.
Mr. Chair,
Second.
Mr. Chair, i-manifest ko lang sana yung mga
Motion is
pwede
hereby
pang
adjourned.
i-invite.
The motion is carried.
May
Adjourned.
next meeting
Meeting
pa,
adjourned.
no problem.